You're listening to a production of the National Media Archive. To learn more or volunteer, go to nationalmediaarchive.com.
Let's set sail with a name you've probably heard, Long John Silver's. Sure, it conjures pirates and treasure, but today it stands for the largest quick-service seafood chain in the U.S. Now, have you ever wondered why there aren't many fast food seafood places out there? Long John Silver's once commanded 2/3 of their niche market. Today, that's slipped to about 1/3. Competitors like McDonald's and Popeyes, not to mention the general growth of seafood in fast food, have chipped away at their dominance. Walk into a Long John Silver's and you're hit with that nautical theme waves on the walls, ship wheels, and the iconic bell you're supposed to ring if you enjoyed your meal. But behind that charm, times have been tough. Sales have been unstable, locations are closing, and public perception is shaky. In fact, their website literally assures visitors, yes, we still exist. Imagine needing to say that. So, how did a quirky seafood chain grow so large, and what's been driving its decades of trouble? Let's dive in and trace the story from its unlikely roots. Picture Kentucky, 1929. The Great Depression is looming, and Jerry Lederer opens a tiny hamburger stand, White Tavern Shop. Not the ideal timing, right? But here's the first technical term market adaptation. Jerry's small, simple setup actually benefited him during hard times, letting his business expand to 13 locations before WWI. Then came resource constraints, wartime food and labor shortages that forced him to close most shops. After WWE, Jerry rebrands as Jericho and launches Jerry's Five and Dime, pioneering roast beef sandwiches a full 17 years before Arby's. Imagine being that ahead of your time. But at 15 cents a sandwich, sales lagged. Was price really the issue? Or was the market just not ready for something different? Faced with lackluster sales, Jerry switched to a safer bet, hamburgers. Playing it safe meant steady, if unspectacular, success enough to set the stage for something bigger. Fast forward to 1963. Jerry passes away, and Warren Rosenthal, an early manager turned CEO, takes the helm at Jericho. Here's where the concept of leadership succession comes into play. Often, a new leader brings bold changes. By 1969, Rosenthal spots a gap: seafood, fast food. Up to this point, Jericho's ventures ranged from failures to middling success. So, why seafood? Seafood was underrepresented in American fast food, and Rosenthal saw a first-mover advantage. If you're first to market, you can grab mindshare before competitors even realize there's a game. They launched Long John Silver's in Lexington, Kentucky. Suddenly, all the prior experience in franchising and capital from going public pays off. Customer demand surges, and within a decade, there are over 10 locations. It's a classic example of how timing and differentiation can create explosive growth. Let's talk franchising and brand differentiation. In the 1970s and 80s, fast food in America boomed. Long John Silver's wasn't just riding the wave, they were steering the ship. By 1979, they'd passed 10 locations. How? Franchising allowed rapid expansion with lower capital risk. Imagine a business where someone else pays to spread your brand. But what made Long John Silver stand out? It wasn't just fish, it was the immersive nautical theme, a unique menu, and that sense of novelty. Here's a question. If Long John Silver's grew so quickly, why didn't anyone else copy them? The answer lies in operational complexity. Seafood requires strict supply chain management and food safety standards. By the late 80s, Long John Silver's was approaching 500 locations, almost a national brand. But then, storm clouds gathered. Let's introduce two technical terms: market saturation and input cost inflation. By the late 80s, fish became more available in supermarkets and at competitors like McDonald's. At the same time, the cost of acquiring fish-think cod and pollock was rising. Lower profits and increased competition put Long John Silver's in a squeeze. If you're thinking, isn't competition good for consumers? Absolutely, but it can devastate margins for existing players. Now, imagine being on top, but every year feels like you're swimming against a stronger current. This set the stage for a risky financial move that would define the next chapter. In 1989, Long John Silver's went through a massive leveraged buyout. That's when a company is bought mainly with borrowed money and the debt is placed on the company itself. Imagine buying a house with a mortgage so large you can barely pay the bills. That's essentially what happened here. $620 million in debt. New management doubled down on the seafood chain, selling off all other business interests. On paper, focusing on your strongest brand makes sense. But high leverage meaning lots of debt can limit flexibility. Even with strong sales, the interest payments eat up cash. The result? By 1998, the company was drowning in debt and filed for bankruptcy. Sometimes, betting the farm just means you lose the farm. What happens after bankruptcy? Usually, a company changes hands. In Long John Silver's case, they were bought by the parent of A, W, and soon after both brands were snapped up by Yum. Brands, a giant in fast food. Here's where brand portfolio management and co-branding come in. Yum tried pairing Long John Silver's with A, W under one roof. You might be thinking, isn't that efficient? On paper, yes, shared costs, more menu options, but in reality, it diluted the unique nautical vibe Long John Silver's was known for. Combined stores didn't perform as well as expected, and the chain's location count kept dropping. It's a classic case. When you try to be everything to everyone, you risk losing what made you special. Let's tackle the elephanter, should I say, the fried fish in the room, nutrition. Americans are increasingly health conscious. Long John Silver's, however, built its brand on deep-fried fish and Hush Puppies delicious, but not exactly heart-healthy. Here's two technical terms, trans fats and sodium overload. In 2013, the Center for Science and the Public Interest called their Big Catch meal the worst meal in America. We're talking 1, 300 calories, 3, 700 milligrams of sodium, and a whopping 33 grams of trans fat, 16 times the recommended daily limit. Bad press hurt their reputation, and while they've since eliminated trans fats, the deep-fried stigma lingers. So, here's a question for you. Can a brand built on indulgence successfully pivot to health? Today, Long John Silver's is fighting to stay afloat. Enter brand revitalization and menu innovation. They've rolled out new logos, updated uniforms, renovated locations, and added healthier items like grilled salmon and green beans. You might be thinking, isn't this just window dressing? Maybe, but modern consumers expect fresh, healthy choices and contemporary branding. They're also leveraging drive-through optimization, making the process faster and more convenient for today's on-the-go diners. Still, changing entrenched perceptions takes time. Will grilled fish ever outshine fried in the public's mind? It's a work in progress in an attempt to balance nostalgia with the demands of a new era. So what can we learn from Long John Silver's decades-long voyage? Two concepts, strategic differentiation and resilience. Differentiation being unique is what launched them, but failing to adapt quickly to market changes and health trends put them at risk. Resilience, though, is why they're still here. Despite bankruptcy, buyouts, and bad press, they found ways to reinvent and survive. Now, you might be thinking, can they ever reclaim their former glory? That depends on how well they balance their heritage with innovation. Next time you pass by that blue and white building, consider the history behind the bell by the door and the lessons this seafood survivor still offers to the business world.